Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Okay, the consent agenda has been approved. Okay, the next item is the regular agenda. The first item on the regular agenda is a discussion on the approval to assume ongoing operating expenses of the Little Red Riding Bus program. Carissa, would you like to open that discussion?
Gonna share my screen. Everybody see my slides and hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you and good evening, board members. I'm really excited tonight to present to you a proposal to merge the service of the Little Red Reading Bus of West Fargo into the operations of the West Fargo Public Library. And we have a guest with us tonight. I'm pleased to be joined tonight by the Little Red Reading Bus project coordinator, Stephanie Shea. And Stephanie is a West Fargo resident and an elementary teacher in the West Fargo Public School District, and she is responsible for bringing the Little Red Reading Bus of West Fargo into existence. And she is available tonight to help answer any questions that you all have as well. So to recap, this proposal comes after a successful summer of service in which the Little Red Reading Bus and the West Fargo Public Library collaborated to deliver books directly to children's homes within the West Fargo Public School District during the pandemic. And the kids and people that we visited this summer were so excited to get those book deliveries and get just a little slice of joy brought directly to their homes during what was and still really is a difficult and isolating time. And to me, this summer showcased the power of library outreach work. And when the library leaves its building and meets residents where they are, it really communicates that we're here to serve and support them. So throughout this summer of close collaboration, we realized that we shared a mission of getting books in the hands of children in West Fargo, and we began to understand a lot more about each other's operations. And we began discussing how we could both work together to serve kids and residents better. And after extensive discussion with the West Fargo Public Schools and West Fargo Educational Foundation, the entities that are currently responsible for operating the bus, we determined that the West Fargo Public Library's operations and staff provide the best opportunity to grow the service of the Little Red Reading Bus of West Fargo. So this proposal aligns with current and future strategic plans of the West Fargo Public Library. In 2018, the library board approved a revision to the 2015 through 2019 strategic plan to develop outreach activities that bring the library's services to individuals who would otherwise have difficulty in accessing them, which included the goal of establishing a homebound delivery service for library materials for those who cannot come to the library for mobility or health or disability reasons. And our current strategic plan that we're developing this year will span from 2021 through 2023, and outreach and service to youth will absolutely continue to be a major component of our strategic plan. I gave you some usage statistics in for the WFPLs and the buses services in the proposal document that I included in your packet. And I think a statistic that really demonstrates a community need and a shift in the West Fargo Public Library's efforts to provide services off-site in recent years is that about a third of total attendance at youth programs took place at programs that we offered off-site at local daycares. And so this really indicates that there's a big need to meet kids where they are to provide early literacy programs, and this is and will continue to be significant in West Fargo. And additionally, as we've started staff discussions during this round of strategic planning, and as I've heard about some of the preliminary feedback that Folkways has received from stakeholders, one theme that keeps coming up over and over again is accessibility and issues with accessing the services of the library. And a lot of that is tied to the building and to geography. And those are our challenges, and that to me gives a clear indication that we will need to develop a proactive outreach strategy to make the WFPL services more accessible to residents going forward. So what would merge service look like, or another way of putting it is, what would the Little Red Reading Bus as a service of the West Fargo Public Library look like? In joining forces, the West Fargo Public Library will continue to use the bus for its original purpose, taking books to kids in the summer months of June and July, taking the library's summer reading program out to kids in order to decrease summer learning loss and give kids a choice of books, which has been proven to be so important in helping them develop a lifelong interest in reading. So the two main priorities for merge service would be to continue to focus on early literacy and summer learning with an intentional goal of reaching underserved and low-income children and families in West Fargo. And reaching the underserved is something that is very important to the original intention of the bus. And the second main priority for merge service will be maintaining and growing existing community partnerships and sponsorships. So over the last 3 years of operation, and Stephanie will be able to talk more about this too, the Little Red Reading Bus has developed really, really strong relationships with the West Fargo Public School District and the Educational Foundation and the Park District and City of West Fargo and other businesses and community sponsors. And the library also has strong relationships with these and other entities as well. And so moving forward, it's really important to Stephanie and I and the West Fargo Public Schools and the West Fargo Educational Foundation that these partnerships aren't just maintained, but that we work together to really continue to grow them through this transition. And that's a key part of this, this whole thing. So the way that we're going to accomplish both of those priorities is through clearly defined operational roles and intentional collaboration with partners during this transition. In discussions with myself and Stephanie and Library Board President Alana Rarick, and then representatives from the Educational Foundation and the schools, we determined that it would be beneficial to form a task force that would ensure continued involvement of existing stakeholders and advise the library in operating the bus during its first year as a WFPL service. And the task force would include representatives from the library board, Friends of the West Fargo Public Library, West Fargo Public Schools, and the West Fargo Educational Foundation, and include participation from myself and other library staff. And the task force will advise the library in things like route planning and alignment with school curriculum and needs and fundraising and sponsorships. And I believe this will be an effective way for us to build on the existing experience with how the bus operated in the past and honor the voices of all these existing stakeholders. So let's talk about short-term and long-term financing for the library's outreach program. In your packet, I included a financial estimate for service in 2021 and 2022 that shows costs for items that are unbudgeted for in 2021 or that for things that we haven't budgeted for in the past because we didn't have a bus program. And I included the cost projection in the way that I did because I recommend building the library's outreach program, including the bus in phases. When I was researching and compiling budget and financing for operating the bus, I looked at the budget for the Little Red Reading Bus in past summers and examples of other bookmobile programs and other libraries. And I worked with the City Fleet and Facilities Department who helped me prepare estimates for fuel and maintenance. So growth in phases and what does that look like and what does that mean for anticipating financing? So in 2021, we would operate a bus route in the months of June and July at parks in a similar fashion to how the bus operated in summers in the past. So here's an example route that the bus ran in 2019. So this is an example of what service could look like to give you an idea. Then in 2022, a next phase that would be a logical next step would be the library expanding use of the bus to our current outreach sites where we deliver library materials and programming currently. And those include 4 senior living communities per month 18 daycares per month and about 5 to 10 community events per year. So events like Westfest and Bookfest and farmers markets and the street fair and things like that. So my projection for 12 months of service includes the summer route that we would also do in 2021, which is similar to the route that the bus has run in past summers. And then it also includes using the bus for outreach work that the library is currently already doing. So in your packet, I left the financing at 2022 because we could sustain at that level of service with small increases in the cost of maintenance and fuel into 2023 and beyond. With the addition of an outreach assistant in 2020 and then a children's librarian, which was approved for 2021, we have the staff that we need to support this program that I've outlined for 2021 and 2022. However, by 2023, depending on the public need and response to the service provided in 21 and 22, we would likely want to build partnerships with more daycares and schools and preschoolers and homeschoolers and neighborhoods and individuals who are unable to visit the library due to mobility or disability. So when we're looking at longer term planning for financing and operations, my recommendation to the library board is to plan for the addition of an outreach services librarian by about 2023. And that staff person would allow us to expand our outreach work with these community partners. And another avenue for service that in the future is to use the bus as a tool to bring programming that we may have traditionally done in the past on site at the library and bring it to communities who cannot or maybe are more reluctant to visit the library for programs. So for example, offering programs like technology tutoring or job search assistance for adults in neighborhoods where there's a need for that type of service. Another example that is especially relevant this year that I've been thinking about is I can't tell you how much library staff would have, library staff and the folks working on the census would have loved to have been able to partner with local community organizations to pop up with a mobile library in some of those hard to count neighborhoods and with laptops and help people fill out the census. So bigger picture that I'm getting at, and this is a kind of a vision that Stephanie and I and others have talked about when we talk about the future of mobile library service in West Fargo, is that we don't only bring books to kids, which is very, very important, but that we also look towards bringing library materials to adults and older audiences, and that we provide mobile programs that support a wide range of literacy and skill development needs, and that this bus is really out there more frequently and becomes a presence in the community that has the power to bring residents together and continuously communicates the library's mission of providing access to educational and recreational resources for all community members. And all of that is very achievable over time. I spent a fair amount of time talking about staffing, but obviously the other long-term expense associated with the bus operation is a replacement bus eventually. And my recommendation, after having talked to others at the city and based on how other bookmobile programs are financed, is to ask for a small amount each year in our budget that would be set aside to fund a future replacement bus. And in addition to that, we would also work with our friends group to solicit sponsorships and private donations to provide additional funding for a replacement bus. And so to kind of just give an example outlook, when I consulted with city fleet and facilities, they recommended that we plan for a replacement within a 5-year period at a cost of probably $30,000 to $50,000, and it somewhat depends on the interior fit up of the bus. So to conclude, the Little Red Reading Bus becoming a service of the West Fargo Public Library will advance access to literacy materials and programs in West Fargo. And the bus as a service of the library provides the best means possible to do this because the library has the staff expertise and organizational operation and collection and a sustainable funding plan to do this work. And I know that one of the library board's goals for the future is to obtain a functional and attractive facility for the West Fargo Public Library that better engages community members with library services. And outreach services including the services of the Little Red Reading Bus absolutely contribute to that goal by providing visibility for library services in the community, which will be very necessary to generate community support for a new facility. And regardless of our next facility, outreach in a community like West Fargo is going to continue to be a needed service of the library going forward. So finally, outreach services that the West Fargo Public Library can provide with the Little Red Reading Bus is essential. And the library should definitely not leave those out of library services who cannot access the building. And also bringing the library out to people provides them more value for the library services that they've already invested in over the years by supporting us through their tax dollars. So the Little Red Reading Bus service will allow us to provide residents with better access and thereby better library services in West Fargo. So to summarize tonight, what I am requesting is a motion from the library board to assume ongoing operating expenses of the Little Red Reading Bus program. And before I turn it over to you for questions and discussion, I just want to go over really quick an overview of some next steps if this proposal were to be approved by the library board tonight. So I've already just briefly presented to the West Fargo Educational Foundation in September, and they've asked me to present this proposal at their October meeting, outlining this operational plan and task force structure. And then if this proposal was approved tonight, then the City Commission would need to approve a resolution and bill of sale to acquire the bus at their meeting on November 2nd. And then at the library board's November 12th meeting, I would ask the library board to approve the formation of a mobile library task force and accompanying bylaws. And with that, I will turn it over to the library board for any questions and discussion. And Stephanie is also here tonight to contribute and answer questions. So thank you for being here, Stephanie.
You bet, Carissa. Thank you.
I have a question. Can you go back to that slide where you showed the expenses for 21, 22, and 23?
Absolutely.
And the one for 2023.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So just the expenses are drastically different in each of the years. Can you just explain through that a little bit better, especially in 2023?
Yep. So the reason that 2023 is drastically different is because that is a year that I am suggesting that we may want to consider hiring an outreach services librarian so that we could provide service to more site partners and start something like a homebound delivery service that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So really what I was trying to convey with this projection is that, you know, in 2021 and 2022, we're going from operating kind of a portion of the year to what full service would look like at our current outreach locations. And then, so that's a smaller increase, but then if there was a need for this by 2023, as we start doing more and more of our outreach work with the bus, we might find it that there's a need to add an outreach services librarian so that we can partner with more sites. And so that's why I just included to give you all an outlook on what that cost for that position would be. So it's, you know, as we go forward, it's really a question of how things progress and how the library board wants to build that service over time. But that is an option and something likely that I see that could be a request in the future. So I wanted to include it.
Okay, so what we'd be voting on tonight would basically just be that first year. And then same thing with what you'd present to the commission. So it would just be that, you know, the taking over of the Little Red Reading Bus, but it's not committing us to those higher expenses long term if they decide not to. Okay.
Correct.
Okay,
correct. Yep. The library board will always have the authority to approve a budget going forward, and that's not dependent on this. The motion being requested tonight is really just the board's confirmation that they want to support the financing of the bus going forward, but how they do it is you know, up to them going forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for clarifying that, Carissa.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree. If you have this slide up at the city commission meeting in November, just, yeah, as you know, you'll get a lot of questions on that. So if you have 2023 on there, it will get more questions than if you have 2021 and 2022 only.
Yep. And the presentation to the commission is a little bit different than the presentation to the library board, because the motion for the library board is to accept, you know, ongoing operating expenses like I had on the slide, but the motion for the city commission is really a formalization that they are acquiring this bus in a documented way. So they're not being asked to approve operating expenses. So my presentation to them wouldn't be the same one that I'm presenting to you necessarily, if that makes sense, because it's a different, it's really serves two different purposes, because the financing is the decision of the library board. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. The other thing is you did talk about, and I apologize, I've got a train whistling in the back.
Oh.
So that $10,000 initially, fuel maintenance, insurance, supplies, future replacement, whatever, you said that was coming out of the current library budget. So that's already paid for essentially.
Yes.
So not like,
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And it's really up to the library board going forward to how much per year they want to request for that replacement fund too, which is also factoring into this projection. I just am providing an option for what it could look like based on what it's looking like it'll probably cost to replace the bus within a 5-year time span.
Okay.
Jody, I will move library board support for financing for the Little Red Reading Bus.
I have one question before we do that. Can I ask it quick?
Well, we should really move the motion. We should put forward the motion so that we can then discuss it.
Okay, got it. Okay, so Larry, can you please repeat your motion?
Yes, I move that the West Fargo Public Library Board support financing of the Little Red Reading Bus.
Okay, is there a second for Larry's motion?
Yeah,
I'll
I'll
second.
second it.
Oh, go ahead. Steve can do it. Yeah.
Okay, is there any additional discussion?
Isn't this when you ask your question, Jody?
I just wanted to give anyone else the chance before I ask my question. So Carissa, can you please clarify how many or what percent FTE you will dedicate towards this project before you get to 2023?
Yes, I can. So the duties are for servicing the bus will take place over a number of staff members, so I can outline what those staff will be and what their role will be. So for summer service, it typically requires about 20 hours per week of staff time actually out at the sites. And of course, there's planning that happens before that. So I'll tell you what the positions are and what their full-time or part-time status is and what their involvement will be. So the 3 staff that will be primarily involved in actually providing the service at the bus will be the Children's Services Librarian, which is a full-time position, Youth Program Assistant, which is a full-time position, and then an Outreach Assistant, which is a part-time position. So those are the people that will provide that 20 hours of work divided amongst themselves out on the bus. And we would need 1 WFPL staffer out on the bus. And the Little Red Reading Bus, and Stephanie can talk more about this too, has a really great following of really enthusiastic volunteers, and we want to continue to engage them. And so the staffing model that I've been planning with is that kind of on an average day, we'd have 1 WFPL staffer driving the bus and being primarily responsible for directing what happens on the bus with the help of volunteers, because they in the past have had just people that are so excited to be out there in the summer reading to kids and doing story times to kids. And Stephanie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Carissa. And I do think, the bus has existed because of its volunteer force. I myself volunteered the first 2 years, all of my time, and happily did it. This bus is very much my heart, and a passion project. And I think, Carissa, you hit it, like, we just have great support, both by our sponsors and particularly by our volunteers. We did find, though, that we couldn't just run on volunteer. We need to ensure the fidelity of the programming. We need to make sure that our volunteers are supported, because they do enjoy interacting with the public. They enjoy, just as you said, being the storytellers or the book readers, sitting alongside kids and helping families, and checking out books. But if there is a technological difficulty, or if there's a tough question, we want to make sure that we have the person on board that will be able to answer that question and support those volunteers. Does that answer the question?
Sure. Yes,
I have a
absolutely.
little bit more to add, if
Okay.
that's okay, Jody, to your question. So, there, like I mentioned, there's a good deal of planning that goes into the route and to how the bus operates that happens outside of what actually happens on a day-to-day basis on the bus in the summer, for example. So our access services manager and our youth services manager will be tapped into that work and doing things like the coordination of volunteers and helping them figure out what stops they're needed for and things like that. The managers will be involved in overseeing that part of things and doing the planning. And the children's librarian to an extent too, because it's really important for that position to be also building those community partnerships with volunteers and different organizations that the bus would be involved in. In terms of the full year service that I talked about with the service to current outreach locations, the staff who do that work are some of the same people. It's a lot of service to youth. So our youth services manager is involved in that currently, and our youth programming assistant do our outreach to our daycares for daycare story time, and they do the book deliveries that we also provide to daycares. And then we have our access services manager who is involved in that work as well. And then we have our outreach assistant that I mentioned, which is new this year, which is part-time, that would be involved in that too. And then going forward, the children's librarian, that is a position that's really is going to focus in on birth through elementary ages. So I can see that what will happen is that position will become kind of the main point of contact for that age group. So yeah, I think that there's going to be some shifting that happens when that position is added, but those are the people that would be involved. And the one that is part-time is the outreach assistant, and the others are full-time. And then of course there's other duties that Stephanie can speak to too, that are communications and marketing oriented. And so that would be our communications specialist, who is full-time also.
Okay.
Right, and if I can jump in, I can just say, I mean, just through the workings this summer, as Carissa mentioned, it became really obvious that our missions aligned, and it also became very obvious that, quite frankly, a team of people can do what I've been trying to do by myself. And I don't carry a marketing specialist degree, but I'm awfully proud of what we've done so far. But I'm just not sure that it's sustainable with just one person. And I just do appreciate just this idea being presented today. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good way of putting it, Stephanie, and is that it's the operation of the team and kind of how all these positions fit together and the roles that they serve that is part of what I saw as making the work that we did this summer with the route and the delivery successful. Because that was not the same type of route, but it had a lot of its own challenges, and we had to pivot several times in figuring out how to do it. And it was kind of like crafting a new route every week. So
yep,
yeah, yep. Yeah, yes, not kind of. It really was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a new route every week. And I love the idea, the collaborative efforts with those of us that had that same mission, that same passion. And we were able to quickly, like Carissa said, pivot and make sure that kids got bundles of books, not just requesting 1 or 2 titles, but we found out their interests, and the library staff were able to put out surveys and kind of find that out. And we quickly pivoted, and by the next week we were delivering bundles of books, and we were getting the feedback from our patrons that what wonderful books and book choices, that we very much hit the nail on the head with that one. And we'd heard that prior to this, that before we did this service this year with the pandemic, that when we were out in the parks, that was the feedback we got, is that we had a great collection of books, that we really catered to our kids and found out who they were, not just here's some books, but we made relationships too. So I think we were able to do that.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment quick. So I don't want to be like negative here, but I am going to play devil's advocate just a little bit. You know, I think the Little Red Reading Bus obviously is a fantastic service. I really support it. And I think, you know, the first couple of years look pretty good. I am sincerely concerned when I look at that bigger number in 2023. And if you're kind of planning for the future, I just don't know if the commission would vote to spend that kind of money on it in the future. So I just figured I better throw that out there, because I'm a little concerned about that part of it.
You won't know until you ask.
That's true. You're right.
And then
Maybe there should be a plan B. So
if the commission votes no on expanding this service, that's something the commission will have to live with in the eyes of its constituents.
yep.
I can speak a little bit to that, Mandy, too. Like the outreach services librarian that I mentioned is something that would likely be a need for outreach work, regardless of whether, you know, it was in conjunction with the bus program or not, you know what I mean? So it's definitely just a thing that is something that the library board and the commission should consider in the future. And I think that time will tell how that usage plays out and what the needs are. But it's something that we should keep in mind, I would say.
Yeah, that's my thought, is just like a plan B type scenario if hiring a full-time staff person, you know, didn't play out. I don't know how it would. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as a possible concern in the future.
I'd like to point out that this program would also be of use to residents in the county, not just in the city of West Fargo. So if this proposal is also, this proposal or a portion of this proposal is also made to the county commission, then additional support may be forthcoming. This is a chance for the West Fargo Public Library to present its good works to not only the city of West Fargo, but to the other communities in the area that lack a robust public library. And that should be something that the county would be willing to support.
That's a fantastic idea, in my opinion, too, is creating partnerships to help fund it so that it doesn't all fall on the city of West Fargo. So,
yeah. That's
Right,
good.
and I can tell you that the bus is built on that foundation of relationships. And I know you probably heard this before, but I'm going to say it again, that this just started with an idea and $500, and the community really came out and in sponsorship and in-kind donations in big ways. So I think when you present the need gets met, and that's kind of been my faith moving forward in this wonderful community. And I do appreciate the comment about county services, because in the work that we've done with some of our sponsors, that is a big need. And you know, it can be more outreach. And I do think it's growth. And I think going back to what Carissa said earlier in her presentation, it's growth in phases, and it's hard to predict what that's going to look like. And I know working with Carissa, just even setting aside money for another bus kind of got me breathing a little bit faster. Like, oh no, like that looks like a lot of money to me. But I think it's really smart planning. And who knows what's going to happen in 2023. I think we're going to have to look every year at the data, like what did that look like? How successful was it, and move forward with that information. But the bus is a decommissioned, you should know it's a decommissioned bus. We took it out of route. It was one that was affordable. And it does have some new tires with some good tread on them. But it is a bus that will probably need to be replaced at some point, or maybe it'll be just part of a bigger fleet, if you will. So it's hard to predict, though.
Just north of me on 45th Street is a recreational vehicle dealership. And certainly, in order to promote their business and to promote their public service, they could be a source that could be tapped to provide a vehicle. I have no
Definitely.
idea if they'd be willing to do it, but they'd be certainly a tap on the shoulder would be couldn't hurt.
Perhaps someone should put anonymous flyers up at Cass County Electric, and maybe they would get the idea to donate a new electric bus in the future.
Well, that would be really cool.
That's been a vision. I'll tell you, we wanted the bus to be one of the 21st century, you know, and that has been something that we've talked about and we've pursued with grants, and just feet on the ground, going and telling people about our bus. And when I say we, a lot of that has been me. And I just really appreciate having broader conversations.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, is there any more discussion? Okay, well, we have a motion that's ready for a vote, I think. So the motion is to assume ongoing operating expenses of the Little Red Riding Bus. Everybody in favor? Vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
That's wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I'm just like, I'm getting chills.
Yes, please continue to volunteer.
Oh, I will. Yeah, you can't get rid of me.
She's been voluntold.
Happily. Yeah, it's been my pleasure. And as I said, it's my pleasure, and it really is my passion and my work with kids. So I love our community, and I love your support. We're gonna do good things. Yeah.
Hey, and as I slide into retirement age, you know, maybe.
We're gonna recruit
Yeah.
you.
Right.
That maybe was a definite yes.
Right.
So
Buy a new pair of Carhartts and you know, a railroad blue cap. And
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna want to know one of those books behind you. I do love that bookshelf. There's got to be a favorite in there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Wonderful. Yep.
Okay, the next agenda item is the director's report.
So I just have a couple of items tonight, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kirsten to provide a brief programming report as well. So just a quick update on COVID and COVID protocols. So as you all know, Cass County was moved to the yellow or moderate COVID risk level at the end of September. And so with that, all the same protocols that have been in place since we reopened the library on July 13th will continue to be in place when you visit the library. And we have begun offering some limited in-person programs again, both indoors and outdoors, with very limited capacity and social distancing in place. And last month, Steve, you had asked about kind of like what we're seeing for foot traffic in the library and how that's been going. And this week, staff and I were talking about how, especially since school started, we've noticed a lot more teens and full families studying and doing homework in the library during the day and evening, a lot more than we normally do. So I just thought that was an interesting way that the pandemic has changed our usage patterns, and I wanted to let you know about that. So that's been kind of neat because you know, teens and younger people are often people that in the past, we would have kind of classified them as underserved by the library, and a group that we wanted to figure out how to do more to meet their needs. So I think that that's an interesting usage pattern that we've seen. So I also want to give you a brief update on Folkways, work with Folkways and strategic planning. So I told you last month that they completed an initial round of stakeholder interviews. And then in September, and then continuing currently in October, they've been working on interviewing about a dozen library users. And they've done all the interviews virtually. And we've also offered the option of using our equipment at the library so that we could make sure that everybody was able to participate regardless of what kind of technology they might have had at home. And when we put this list together of users, we tried to select folks whose use of the library varied in frequency and types of services that they used. And we tried to look at selecting people with and without children, varying ages, ethnicities, that kind of thing, so we could get a diverse swath of users represented. And so then when these user interviews wrap, they're going to take the information that's gathered and they're going to use it to develop personas, which I mentioned a little bit last month. And so in the future, personas are a tangible description that will be based on these user interviews that will help us answer the question as we move forward. Who are we planning these programs for, and who are we planning these services for? So they'll help us kind of make sure that we are thinking about the needs of our users when we go forward devising services and programs. So Folkways is going to plans to present and review these personas and the user interview data with the library board at the November 12th meeting. So next month. And simultaneously right now, Folkways and myself and City Communications Director Melissa Richard and Communications Specialist at the library Ellen Rosso, we've been working on devising a marketing campaign that will inform the public about the project and the upcoming opportunities to participate. So Folkways has been working on obtaining feedback from current library users right now, like I said, and they will present that to you next month. And then as we move forward into the fall, this next part of the project is going to be much more like public facing, with two main opportunities for public input. And one will be a set of open house style events where the goal is to get some narrative feedback from groups who are not library users or who are generally underserved by the library. And the other main component of main input opportunity will be a survey that we're going to distribute as widely as possible. So Folkways and the communications department are going to put together a plan for a media blitz for me to get out into the community and do interviews with local media, with the call to action being fill out this survey and help shape the future of the public library in West Fargo. So the other key board meeting that I just want to mention briefly tonight, where Folkways is going to plan to attend and present to you, will be in January, because by that time the survey will be wrapped and they will be able to present some results and then get feedback from all of you before they move to the final step, which is devising future recommendations. So that's kind of bringing everybody up to speed and pointing out a few of the key things that are upcoming. And so I emailed you kind of that in written form with dates and timelines today. So yeah, now I'll turn it over to Kirsten to give a brief programming update.
Hello, everybody. I will be giving an update on adult programming with mostly a focus on our One Book, One Community programs, and then I'll give you a quick glimpse into October and November and what that kind of looks like for our adult programs. I know many of you are probably familiar with One Book, One Community, but I'll give just a quick brief overview of what that is, so for those that aren't. It is a collaboration amongst the Fargo-Moorhead Metro public libraries, as well as academic libraries and the historical societies within the area. A book is selected by their planning group, and I'm the representative for the library on that planning group. And then we build programs and activities around that theme and that book. And this year that book was The Logger Queen of Minnesota by J. Ryan Straddle. There was a virtual author talk on October 24th, but the book is really about Midwest, and it's about hard work and inheritances and how that affects your family, as well as a lot of like beer and food and a lot of other fun stuff as well. So really from the library perspective, we wanted to develop programming that was laser focused on what our bigger picture goals were, and that would then navigate how we planned programming. So first, we really just wanted to make West Fargo community more aware of and engaged in the One Book, One Community programming. The West Fargo Public Library is the only West Fargo representative on the committee, and so we really wanted to increase that awareness and involvement from the West Fargo residents. Second, One Book, One Community is focused on community learning experiences, and the chosen book read is really where those programs and that theme ties into, and how you can experience a book and how that affects you with your neighbors and throughout your community. And so that third part is really providing those community connections and partnering with people and having you have conversations about a book, and let me challenge what you think about the world and how your neighbors may have a different experience as well. So to focus in on those three big goals, I tried to stick to that theme, and I really leaned on the female entrepreneurship theme within the book this year and planned out 4 different sessions that were around key tactical business components. And so we had topics around strategy and finances, as well as technology for small businesses. And those ideas came around from our involvement on the DBA in West Fargo and real concerns that local business owners have, and wanted to focus on our female entrepreneurs within the West Fargo community. We especially leveraged our goal of community connections with this program. We had over 11 organizations that led all of those different sessions, from our brewers and bakers panel to each of those different strategy sessions for business owners. There's from the NDWBC, we had NDSU's NICE Center, High Point Networks, Microsoft, a whole bunch of people participate in those programs, and to really make them successful. It was a really cool collaboration. This series is also one of our first real practice runs through our new evaluation program with our programs. And we've been using Project Outcome, which that's a tool from the Public Library Association that has surveys that we can send to our attendees and maps them to outcomes and helps us measure to make sure that our programs are serving the community and having that impact. So we can see that, yes, it'll help them move to the goal, whatever their goal is, to reach that outcome. And we really focused on that economic development outcome for those programs. We also had 2 more series. So that all of these series were virtual this year. We stayed on the safe side and had them all virtual, and had a lot of positive feedback from those surveys as well. The second series was a collaboration with Square One Kitchens in Fargo. They are a catering company that also provides cooking classes and has an industrial kitchen that is a home for other businesses. So we had 4 women-owned businesses make virtual cooking classes for us to share with our community, and they all kind of had a Midwest recipe theme, and so we provided recipes, and people were able to engage and bring those recipes into their kitchen and practice cooking at home during this time. I know a lot of people took up sourdough bread and all of that good time. So we did have one in that series as well, but a way for our patrons to engage with the library while at home. The last part of our One Book, One Community programming was our Bean Stack Challenge, which I think you'll all sort of remember from summer reading program. We don't want Bean Stack to only be for summer reading program, but we really want that tool to expand throughout the year, that it's how they log activities, create book reviews, continue to log their reading even in the non-summer months. And this is a way for us to do an activity challenge and get people to support local businesses as well as engage with our online programming. And they were able to be entered into a drawing for one of 10 copies of the theme book this year. So that program actually runs through the rest of October, since this window One Book Community is August through October. So that is not quite done yet. So that's the last fitting piece of One Book, One Community for the library. A quick preview into the next coming months is that we'll continue to have craft classes with the library for adults that are focused on adult crafting. We have our 3 in-person book clubs. One will be moving to a more virtual capacity. We have a pine needle basketry class, as well as our one-on-one genealogy assistance is still a program that we have, as well as some potential digital skill building and adult writing workshops in the future. So we have a lot on the docket coming up, and we're excited to continue offering fun programs during this time, even though the library is open and things are changing COVID circumstances here, but we're able to continue to provide programs for adults.
That sounds great. So
Well, good, I'm glad you like it.
So congratulations, and I've bookmarked Square One Kitchens for further study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love in the Oven Bakery is the owner of Square One Kitchens, and she has a really great stout and peanut butter bar recipe you're going to want to check out.
You said stout. Yes, I will check that out.
I have actually taken several classes there. They do a great job.
Yes, and me too. And Milkmaid is there, I think, too, the cheesemonger.
She is, yes, she is.
Megan,
She
yeah.
did one of the videos too. So she did a hot dish video.
Are these videos on the WFPL YouTube channel?
They sure are. All of them
Dandy.
are from all the series,
Okay.
from the Women in Business series, as well as the Midwest Kitchen series.
Dandy, thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah, check out the Women in Business recordings too. They're awesome. They were amazing panels.
Yeah. The first one I didn't mention, this was a brewer and baker panel. So it has a representative from Wild Terra, Prairie Rose Meadery, Thunder Coffee, and then Cakes by Altia. She was our baker on the panel.
Okay, are there any more parts to the director's report, Cursa? Okay. All right, thank you both for that. So the next item on the agenda is other business. And for the other business section today, we have a couple community members joining us to visit with the board. So at this point, we would like to welcome Mary Nelson from the community to visit with the board. Mary, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, hi, Mary. Welcome to the board meeting this evening. We would like you to share with us your comments and input. We would like to turn the floor over to you for the next 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, as a 30-year employee and past editor, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the West Fargo Library Board about a subject that is very dear to my heart, the West Fargo Pioneer. When the first issue rolled off the press on March 14th, 1967, Don Witham made a pledge to provide a quality newspaper for the city at a cost then of 5 cents per issue. The West Fargo Pioneer is one of the key reasons that West Fargo has been able to remain an independent community with its own identity. The history of the city was printed in each weekly issue and preserved in yearly bound books. Over the years, the West Fargo Pioneer became the voice of the city. Every Wednesday, residents were kept informed of everything going on in their rapidly growing city. Schools, sports, the sewage lagoon, flooding, and then the Cheyenne diversion. West Fargo is the fastest growing city in North Dakota, yet the history of the city is no longer readily accessible to the community. The history of West Fargo belongs to the community, and the history of the community belongs in West Fargo. Please bring the yearbooks back to West Fargo where they belong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We appreciate you sharing your comments with the library board. Next, we'll hear from David Sampson. David, can you hear us now?
Yes. How about you? Is it working?
Yes, we can.
All right,
Yes, we can hear you well. So David, you will have the next 3 minutes to share your comments with the board. And we would just ask you to please not in general repeat what we heard from Mary. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. My name's Dave Sampson. Lifelong resident of West Fargo. You've probably seen some of my work in the Forum newspaper. I started at the paper in 1981 as a part-time sports photographer, and gradually went on from there. And you've probably seen my stuff all around town. Anyways, I'll make it quick. Arlen Rasmussen contacted me about a month ago and said that the hardbound copies of the Pioneer were not in the library anymore. But so back in 2005, when the Forum purchased our paper, we figured that they were probably going to sell the building and reduce staff, and we kind of guessed correctly. So Karen Huber and I thought that, we need to find a spot where we can put these books so the general public can have access to them. So I came up with the idea that maybe we should approach the library. And then I kind of got sent down to the Forum in 2006. So she kept the ball rolling, and papers have been there ever since. So I was just kind of sad to hear that they went up to NDSU. They might be, they were at the library so people could just kind of grab them and page through them and find whatever they wanted. I think up at NDSU they might be locked away with the white glove treatment, and I just don't know how many people are actually going to go up there anymore. So, if not, it would be nice if we could get those back to the library, and if not to the library, maybe somewhere in town like Bonanzaville or something. And yep, that's about all I have. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Lifetime supporter of the library. Been going since it opened back when I was in 5th grade. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, David. We appreciate you sharing your comments with the library board.
Can I make a couple of comments, or is there anybody else from the public?
There are no other community members.
Okay.
I think, we can move on to other business, I guess.
Well, this would be under the same topic, and I guess I'd honestly like to speak on both sides of the issue. I have had members from the public communicate to me their concerns and asked if I'd speak on their behalf. So I guess I'd like to make a couple comments on their behalf, but I've also personally gone to the NDSU archives and experienced that for myself to see what that whole process was like. So as far as speaking on behalf of the members of the public, I've gotten some of the same concerns. One of the individuals did not speak tonight, couldn't be here. But her issue as well was that she enjoyed being able to just come in, browse through the records, really felt that they belonged in the city of West Fargo, was concerned about the people that had donated things that wanted them specifically in West Fargo, and were concerns that they wouldn't want to keep their records with the collection if they weren't going to be at the West Fargo Library. So I understand the concerns myself. It's nice to be able to just walk in and browse through the records. On the other side of it, I wanted to experience what it was like myself to kind of be a member of the public, not a reporter, but just how hard is this process to actually access. So really knowing nothing, I went onto the NDSU library website because I didn't know the archives was separate. So I just went to NDSU library. I went through the website, and I personally couldn't find how to get a hold of the archives, whatnot, but I just found a random email for NDSU library, and I emailed that person, and I told them my request and what I was interested in knowing. And within an hour, I got an email back, and they're like, yep, we can actually absolutely help you. I'm going to send your request to archives, and we'll get somebody working in your request. And I had actually requested some historical records on the West Fargo airport. Well, an archivist got back to me and is like, yep, I'll help you out. Here's a number, here's an email, but in the next 1 to 2 days, I'll get back to you with your research. And I was amazed. I think it was 24 hours later, I got pages and pages and pages of the documents I had requested. I would have never in a million years found all these articles by myself. So I will have to say I was incredibly impressed with the NDSU archivist and the information that was provided to me. Then I also wanted to know what it was like to go actually in there and see what the building was like and what it would be like as a person from the public to go in. So I actually did that yesterday. I went in, I got a tour, and I learned a lot about this place. And, you know, I know a lot of people are concerned about not being able to have access, but on the other hand, something as important as the pioneer, and like the residents were saying, how important that is to our community. It's our history, and we don't want that records, we don't want it to be destroyed. And it could be if it was mishandled. And here it's kept temperature controlled, humidity controlled. If the public goes in, you have to wash your hands, so you're not getting the oils, you're not getting hand sanitizer on it. It's, you know, a very specific process, but they will pull any documents you want to look at for you. So they pulled out books and books and books of old commission minutes that I had requested to see. And I would, again, by myself, I don't know if I would have found it anywhere near as quick. And they had it all right there, ready to go. I could sit there as long as I want as a member of the public and page through it. So honestly, I found the experience incredibly welcoming, easy, great for the public. They have, you know, archivists there 40 hours a week that'll help you. It doesn't cost the taxpayers any additional money. And this isn't just West Fargo bringing our collections there. It's the entire southeastern portion of the state. And I know some people are concerned. They're like, oh, it's just West Fargo. Why can't we keep our West Fargo records there? But Fargo's got their records there. A whole lot of the surrounding communities, the county. This is not unusual. This is the norm, actually. The norm is not for these records to be kept at the community library. It's for them to be kept at an archivist place so that they are preserved and they're not destroyed, and that the people are properly handling them. So then I also asked about getting these articles, you know, digitized and that process. And it's a much longer, slower process than I realized. It takes a ton of time, and they are working on it so that eventually you'd be able to go onto the archivist website, put in keyword search and have information pop up. But that is going to be an incredibly long process. So they do have their staff working on it. I don't believe the staff at West Fargo Public Library would have the time or the resources to do what they're actually doing. So after listening to the public and their concerns, which I genuinely understand, but then experiencing the process myself, I do believe that from my point of view, the correct decision was made to bring the records to the NDSU archives where the public can see it, and they're taking incredibly good care of it. So that's my point of view on the whole thing.
Okay. Is there any other business the board would like to discuss? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. And next week you get your professional president back. Thanks for waiting through the meeting with me.
I just want to say thank you again to everybody here and really appreciate it. I can't wait to work together in the future.
Thanks.
It'll be wonderful.
Thanks, Jody. You did a sterling
Thanks,
job,
Jody.
and there'll be a
Thanks.
little something extra in your pay packet.
Oh, thank you. And look at you. I love the tie, the suit and tie, looking very dapper.
Thank you very much. It's, you know, I'm a professional librarian and I've got to keep up the image.
You look the part.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
And by the way, this is all real too. This is not a virtual
know.
background.
I never questioned it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.